have a TV that supports Duck Hunt. I
I
still own
love
it.
that you pulled up like Mario. I'm like, I've got a Mario Kart in Mario Super Mario 3. This game means so much to me. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Casually Hardcore Podcast, episode 55, a special episode. Chris and I, as a 2020 resolution, want to bring more podcasts talking about more things as they develop and as they break. And so today we have no guest, and you'll be seeing this, scattered out throughout the year, where it's just two of us coming at you with some topics, some information, and more. So be sure to keep recommending guests to us. That is one of the things that we want to really keep up with the podcast. All in all, should be a really good year, and we thank you for tuning in. So let's talk about the age of exclusives. Recently, Microsoft's executive vice president of gaming, Phil Spencer, went on record throwing a little shade at
Is it shade?
well, we're going to discuss at Nintendo and PlayStation, saying that they're out of alignment, that what they are is they're kind of not in a position for what he's talking about with competition against, and this is going to get people very upset, both Google and Amazon. So that's what today's show is going to be about. We've got some questions. We got discussion topics. Apparently Chris thinks everything's great and wonderful and death to Sony. That's what I'm reading from his expression right there. We all know Chris just hates.
I'll definitely play devil's advocate here. So even when I agree with you, we don't have a guest to throw in a third point of view. So I will for sure disagree with you on this. But just to kind of
let's get hashtag cancel Chris trending on Twitter, guys.
Make a shirt. Like, let's buy all the shirts. So by the way, we have new merch coming out.
What?
Guys.
Plug?
So I am looking forward to releasing that. We're finalizing the designs here. So Microsoft said that Sony and Nintendo aren't their like real competitors. That's the gist of the statement. You can go through and pick the words out and all that. But Nintendo is a gaming company. It's what makes them unique in the space, is they're the only gaming company really out there that makes their own hardware, has their own IP, and is exclusively centered on gaming. Sony is a hardware company that has entertainment divisions. They happen to have an involvement in movies and in games and all of that. But that's what they do. And their hardware is in competitors' products. So that's where they make their money. They get a little piece of a lot of pies. But when you look at Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, what they have in common is that they're all really just in the business of businesses. They own tons and tons of things across so many platforms. They have everything from software solutions to business type development products to, when you look at things like Microsoft Office and all of that. So saying that Microsoft is not really competing against Sony and Nintendo in some ways at like a grander scale has always been true. Like, that's not news. And so I think people took it as shade, and it's like, yeah, but like, he's not wrong.
Right. So one of the things that I found really interesting about this, as we look at the industry as a whole, because you just brought up a really good point. Phil Spencer's gone on record, says that every time PlayStation sells a game or a console, they make money. Right. They do that because they're in the development of, their Visual Studios. They have licenses for that. They've got business relationships, Excel, Office, etc. For the longest time, we've seen the competition heat up in terms of, cloud computing, cloud services. Like, right now, this podcast's outline is on Google Docs. It's not on a Word document. So there's competition. You have I have a Samsung and an iPhone. We just saw the historic announcement with Samsung teaming up with Xcloud and Xbox just this morning or late last night, depending on where you live. So there's some real interesting thoughts. The thing I want to get Chris's opinion on before we kind of also dive in, there's another company out there that was not mentioned that I also think is out of alignment, and that's Apple. And Apple makes billions of dollars in the gaming space. And whenever I was told yesterday that Nintendo would never work with a foreign company, like as a statement, and I go, they're on Apple products. Like
Right.
and that was a good move because they were selling nostalgia. You had the Wii U. It's like kids are playing mobile games. And when you look at the pure numbers of gamers, estimated at 2.5 to 3.5 billion, so we should qualify like what type of gaming audience are we talking about? The enthusiast gamer, which what Phil said is not going to resonate because it doesn't make sense. They're still going to buy a PlayStation 5, a PlayStation 6, and I think those products are still going to exist because there's going to be a market for them. You're going to want the latest and greatest technology to play the games the way you want. Ownership might be a concern. You still might want that physical disc. But the funny thing about the physical disc is, especially with GameStop, I bet you're going to be getting that from Amazon, from their stores and more. So there's still all of those different interconnections. Apple, where Microsoft and where Amazon and where Google are concerned, they're fine with taking money, but they've never been a company that's really heavily invested in gaming, and that's why the Apple Arcade is kind of this interesting, I guess, them dipping their toes into the water. But I think the core reality is that when you factor out core gamers, you and me, those probably watching this podcast, probably raging, just upset because I want to be very clear. Well, let's estimate core gamers at 500 million to be, conservative, right? You got 100 million to 110 million PlayStation 4 sold, 50 or so Xboxes, over 52 or, going up easily to 60 Switches. Let's just estimate high on core gamers. That is nothing in comparison to the mobile and to the cloud market and for the potential with the goal of reaching 7 billion gamers worldwide. Probably not like you or me, but if anybody here is listening and knows, I don't like mobile games. So how do we get that mobile gamer converted into something that is hopefully a better experience? And it's about removing roadblocks, and it's about cloud computing. And every time we talk about cloud computing, anything that comes up literally is going to tie into we don't have the network bandwidth, the latency,
That's
things
such
like
a
that.
silly reason to worry about it, right? That would be like not designing better cars because we don't yet have the highways. Like the infrastructure is not. We don't need to wait for the use. Like they don't need to be tied. You can have the demand for the use can help drive the infrastructure, and the infrastructure of the internet is such a large thing. Like I don't think people realize how big of an undertaking. It's really easy to hate ISPs, but like what internet is and like how internet functions, like what happens when it goes from your house. And people are like, oh, well, there's like a line that goes to my house that's above ground or underground and it goes to like a box. But then what? Like, are you aware that there's basically like big super highways? Like one of the big fiber connections, the big like corridor in Dallas runs right up 75. So when people are like, wow, 75 is a highway is never maintained well. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff under it. So I guarantee there's work. It's just not being done straight to the highway. And then like, where does it go from there? Like, how do I get something to Europe? And then how do we talk about caching things so that you're not having to request a video from Europe every time you see it because everybody in the US is watching it? Like the internet is a very complex network. And so to say like, oh, well, it's not good enough, so we shouldn't build a better use for it, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, there might be a lack of commercial viability out the gate, right? Like you may only have a percentage of gamers that can take part in a certain type of cloud gaming.
Right. But isn't that just a function of time? Because
it's just time.
Right.
Straight
So
up.
like, I would say, and in my mind estimates, I look at where are we at in 2030? Because 10 years is a nice, easy, measurable chunk of time that should happen in hopefully all of our lifetimes who are watching this. That we'll all be alive in 10 years and we're going to see something. Not that it's going to be, not that I'm saying that it's the only way, like that consoles are going away. We will see more physical hardware because there will be a demand. Like the example
Yes.
I gave was my Xbox and PlayStation 5 will be sitting on my television, which is capable of 120 frames a second, it's a 4K, but it's like that's going to be that experience that the console's going to drive because I'm, like while I have the bandwidth, I want the premier pristine experience. When I boot up my console, it's fast, it's immediate. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see how the cloud platforms compete in that high fidelity, like that Lamborghini style experience. But that's going to cost a premium to my wallet to have that experience, I think, in 10 years, where when we look at cloud gaming, that basically raises the tide for everybody, allows, what's the cost to get in and play that game that everybody's talking about? Nothing. You just go pay the cost of the game, and you can go play that game today on any device, anywhere in your house. So back to my example, I'm going to, like, from a content creation perspective, as soon as Xcloud runs in a browser, what reason would I need to have my Xbox sitting next to my computer? Because I'm in a position, because here in the DFW area, I've got gig internet, I have no data caps, there is nothing, and my cloud experience is pristine, no latency. And that's the key. Like, when it comes to whether it's a 3D movie, which I'm not a fan of, whether it's a new kind of experience that you just can't communicate, virtual reality is a classic example. It's something that once you go hands-on and you're like, I'm playing the game, it's like the console is right here in my living room, but it's somewhere in a data center. Once you have that experience, it kind of clicks. You're like, I get it now. Now, the whole technical revolution of it is that at some point, that means they could charge more for consoles, and that means gaming overall will get better, because they don't have to make a console that's mainstream. They don't have to make a physical device that says, well, we have to hit this price point. So that means we can't put all this cool tech into it. We can't put the best graphics card in it, the best processor in it, because it won't sell. Because we know right now from just historic, don't charge $600, because that is such a weird barrier to people. And that's where the next generation, the fact that PlayStation 5
you think the $1,000 phone will change that?
I think we'll see $1,000 consoles, but I don't think that's. I don't think that's
people
now.
Are kind of getting over. The question with 2030, like when we talk about internet infrastructures, are we still going to be relying on things like physical cables dragged underneath the ocean? Like, the fact that internet still runs that way sounds crazy. People picture it like going to a satellite and back. Like, that's not how the internet works.
Yeah, there's cables under the ocean.
There's physical cable, and they're owned by big players. So yes, some of them are owned by ISPs, but some of them are owned by data companies, because that's really the value of owning them. So places like Facebook have a sharehold place in cables underneath the internet, because they want to have a part in knowing how that data crosses under there.
From an investment perspective, it's also interesting that Facebook wasn't listed. I don't see them investing heavily in gaming, but what you've seen them do, because when you look at Mixer, when you look at Twitch, and you look at YouTube, which is the platform that we're primarily on, that's tied to Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, YouTube in this case. Facebook is trying to do something with Facebook Gaming, and if anybody's tried out Streamlabs OBS, there's this thing saying multi-stream to Facebook. That's being paid, because Facebook, as an aging platform, has an aging demographic, and they're trying to draw in and attract a younger, vibrant, passionate audience. And one of the things that is the coolest thing about anything that Phil Spencer said right now literally is that gaming is a very important thing to Microsoft, to Amazon, and to YouTube, and to Google. And it's that because it gets you in their ecosystem. It gets you in that system. And then, so the counter argument with all this, right? Because that's the technology, that's the cloud. It's just a function of time, and the more the internet improves and people can try it out, you'll slowly start to see a shift, because it is the lowest barrier for entry into playing your games. So, Sony and Nintendo, that's the crux of the comment. Having some, I would say, arguably the strongest IP when it comes to recognizable video game. What is a video game, right? Like, go play your PlayStation. That used to be Nintendo heavily, but Nintendo still has the best IP in the market, hands down, most valuable, most recognizable, most iconic. Out of all of this, we've already seen Sony and Microsoft team up. Sony said, we're not going to go spend billions and billions of dollars and try to figure this cloud thing out. Let's team up with Microsoft. That's a done deal.
And they're good at this stuff, right? Like, Blu-ray technology in an Xbox is Sony technology.
Right,
Blu-ray
but it's
is owned by Sony. And so any device, so they're very good at making sure that they don't just get cut out later. Mm-hmm. So I think people's fear is like, they're going to get on there and then Phil Spencer's going to just pull the plug and Sony's going to be screwed. Sony has never shown that they don't have the business sense to protect themselves.
No, Microsoft. Well, and here's the thing: if Microsoft does that, Amazon and Google are right there to pick them up at a mint. And so that's why somebody was asking me yesterday, like, why am I defending Stadia? And I'm like, I'm not defending Stadia. I'm one of its harshest critics. I'm defending gamers. Like at the core of it, I want strong companies that are competing against one another, because that means the gamer is going to win. If there's a strong Stadia, strong Xcloud, strong Amazon, hell, strong PlayStation Now, strong Nintendo, what does that do? It gives gamers choice. It lowers costs. It makes sure that Microsoft doesn't go all like Dr. Evil or whatever. I forget who owns Amazon. His name's recognizable.
Jeff Bezos.
Bezos doesn't go evil villain launching rockets into space. And then I'm gonna block.
He's gonna launch rockets.
He is, but I'm saying like where he's gonna block out the sun. And so with all that, it's that. If anybody's worried that Microsoft's going to pull the rug out of PlayStation, you've got Google and you've got Amazon stepping up to chomp on the bit. Just yesterday, Activision pulled their games from Geforce Now. So Geforce Now is another cloud streaming platform where you own the games, you play them on a server in the cloud. So speculation is they're going. The Amazon, Activision Blizzard signed a big deal for YouTube. Speculation is they're doing it for Amazon or for Stadia, some kind of exclusive deal. That's all speculation at this point.
Yeah,
because
so
there
the thing
are
I would
rules.
remind people with Google is that Google's a very, 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 very large company. Like thousands and thousands of employees, thousands and thousands of like white collar employees. The jobs there's typically less of in an organization, they're still huge, even by those terms.
Mm-hmm.
They own businesses that function totally separately from each other. They have a hardware division, they have software divisions, when people talk about the Activision Google deal, they say, well, it's so interesting that Stadia got cut out. It's possible Stadia wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
It's possible that it didn't get declined or not declined. They simply weren't at that lunch altogether, because the people at that lunch, if you think about that business meeting, what brought those minds together is you have the two largest search engine and like cloud-based data groups from Google and YouTube meeting up with Activision and saying, we want your data.
Yeah.
So that was a data-driven transaction. They said, we want to pay for exclusive rights to your data and to the user's data that will come seek out your information. That's it. That's what they did. It had nothing to do with games on Stadia, had nothing to do with any of that.
YouTube Gaming
I don't know
and
that
Stadia
I
are also
read
two
into
different companies within the big, within the organization. So
it's what can make it look like blunders. It's what can make like, well, how come Stadia is not integrating with YouTube well? Yes, I mean, both their paychecks are underneath the same stock header, but like they don't answer to each other.
Yeah.
They're not in the same building, eating in the same cafeteria. They're two completely different entities.
That's something in my mind. I'm wondering if Google steps in and kind of or restructures some of their goals, right? Because having Stadia and having YouTube Gaming kind of being separate and maybe even butting heads, like at some point you got to step in and be like, no, we're integrating because that's what we said we are. Get over your silos. It's natural. This isn't something that would be unique to Google. It's a business thing. People create their silos. They're like, this is my piece of the cheese. Don't you dare move it. Like, I know where it's at. I'm comfortable here, and so on. Now,
so what makes that interesting as we move into our main topic is as we start to talk about things like Stadia and even things like Twitch and Mixer. So we can start with Twitch and Mixer because that's the easiest example of where we've seen this. But like it's taking place on the gaming side of the conversation is exclusives, right? Paying for Ninja to come over. What does that buy? And effectively what it buys is competition, right? It validated Mixer as a platform. It doesn't matter if the numbers are up or the numbers are down. The fact is you now know what Mixer is. That's what they purchased.
Yeah. And then they've been purchasing more and more deals, making it more advantageous for content creators to come into that ecosystem. And that's good. That's good for Twitch streamers. That's good for Mixer streamers. And the more that they can even those odds and give you a choice in the content in which that you want to go consume, as well as the content that you want to go and produce, that prevents this one place from, just saying we own everything.
Right. Viewers have been declining on Mixer since their whole media tour there. But number of creators has been on the rise. So like if the goal was to purchase validity as a platform and the people they were trying to convince was creators, then they've succeeded. And as consumers, whether or not you have ever created a Mixer account, whether or not you've ever typed Mixer into the search bar of your browser, Twitch is a better platform for it. Mm-hmm. YouTube is a better platform for it.
Yeah.
They have added features that they did not add otherwise. Twitch, throughout all this debacle of competing for streaming space, has added the ability to pay people that aren't partnered. Now you can have a share in things. Like they're changing the game. So like Mixer is good for everybody, but these exclusive deals often get phrased as like anti-consumer, right? Like Ninja should be able to do whatever he wants.
Well, beyond that though, like you talk about anti-consumer, and that kind of gets into the concept of exclusives and crossplay, because outside of the content streaming wars, it really comes down to the games. That's something we say is if the game is good, it doesn't matter who's boycotting or who's upset. It's a good game. The majority of gamers outside of maybe that core, that connected group, they're just like, oh, it's a good game. Cool. I'm going to go buy it. And then you go look at record sales numbers. However, Stadia, obviously not having the strongest launch, is coming into this, and it's like, gosh, like why don't you just launch into beta? Like, why don't people just launch into beta? There's got to be some legal or either, I hope there's a legal reason. Otherwise, the reason is buffoonery. It would be the term that I'm going to throw out there. And it namely ties into the news that they've got 120 games. They're looking at timed exclusives for their platform, and I can get behind. I can understand the business aspect of a time exclusive. My concern is buying IP that people want to play and then locking it away on your system. So I've been an advocate for Halo coming to PlayStation. When you look at Call of Duty being the number one selling game year over year, that's a third-party game. If you want more relevance for your IP, like Minecraft, I think that's when you need to start breaking it out beyond the walls of these ecosystems. And I think, again, as a function of time, we're going to see that in the next, I would say, 15 years. Like, I'm going to put plenty of time on that one, because I get the reason of why you want to drive sales, and that's why I think we'll see more things go into the mindset of a timed exclusive rather than the locking away behind any, like, if you want to play X, you have to own outside of Nintendo. Nintendo's still going to do their thing. I don't see them changing the way they run their business. But what are your thoughts there? Because
so you touched on a couple things.
Yeah.
So first of all, you said that Stadia could have had a smoother launch and should be an open beta. And they talked about in their original thing, hey, this is going to be the paid version. There's going to be a free version. So when you see headlines like they've caved and gone free to play, that was literally in their original business.
They need to go free to play quicker.
They have. That has always been the plan, is that they were going to bring this to users, just like YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be an ability to toss them money, but what they really want is your eyeballs. So let's get all the eyeballs, and then if we can collect money on top, that's great. The fact that there aren't more users, I think, is probably a little bit by design. I would give them that benefit of the doubt, because I think they don't want to have the servers crash from overabundance. I think they literally just needed a little data, and the amount of money they get from users is a drop in the bucket compared to what they spent.
Yeah.
So like, it's not an issue of like, oh, if we doubled our users, we would have made back the cost of Stadia. No. The amount they spent, there's no number of users they could have right now that's going to make a dent in that.
Yeah.
So like, the money isn't the issue. So if you have somebody that doesn't want money, the question is what's motivating them. And so they've decided how much data they want to collect, and that's how many users they've scaled for. Now, maybe they've hit their targets, maybe they're below their targets, maybe they're above their targets. We don't know, because they're super private. They didn't tell us we're targeting this many users and this is how many we have. They don't release that. But it would be interesting to see it would be interesting to be in those meetings to see if they think Stadia is being successful, because I don't think Stadia is built for now. I think it's built to take on Xbox's version, PlayStation's version. So it's built for later.
Yeah.
And it has to be somewhat public so that they have testers. And so I think everything they're doing right now is all intentional. I think it's a giant chess game. Now, that does not mean that their long-term goal will be successful.
Right.
We've seen plenty of things fail coming out of companies that size.
So what about them like potentially buying exclusives? Saying, hey, you like this game that you could have always played on X platform? You got to come to Stadia now.
Yeah, so there's two different ways to do exclusives. The first is, and we've seen Stadia do this, where they go approach a studio who doesn't have the money, and they bring us a game that as consumers we would not have gotten otherwise. And they say, but in trade for that, it needs to be exclusive for this amount of time or forever. Or like in Nintendo's cases with things like the Wii, we want you to build a game that it's inherently exclusive because it only runs on this style of hardware. So if you build something that runs uniquely on Stadia, there isn't another platform out there like Stadia at that scale right now that can allow you to throw infinite graphics cards at a server in real time for an unlimited number of users. Like, if you build a game that takes advantage of that, and that is baked into your game design, that game can't leave. But like those exclusives, I think, will never bother me because you're literally giving the consumer something they wouldn't have had otherwise. That's awesome, right? Because that's what we want as consumers. We want more games. Now, where people start to have an issue is when you do something like Epic, where they go out and they just purchase things. So you go out and you just go. So imagine Stadia had been involved in that deal, and the next Call of Duty was releasing exclusively on Stadia.
Right.
There's an amount of money that would have made that happen. Now, considering Activision talks in billions, that number is probably very, very large. Yeah. There is a number. It just probably has more digits than any of us know how to write. And so is that a problem? Is that anti-consumer? In the short term, I can see why it feels yes. And I know that you're often arguing yes. So I'm going to focus on why it's not.
Okay.
And the reason it's not is things like Steam. Steam is a huge platform that is far from perfect. If we make all games run on all platforms, what makes Steam get better? I mean, in my opinion, nothing. There's no competition. And how do you take on Steam if you're like, well, I have all the same games they have, but I'm different? Who cares? Like, Steam's immensely successful. So if you want Steam to improve as a platform, you have to make other platforms relevant. And exclusives is one of the tools to do that. Exclusives is one of the tools that makes people go try out Epic. So Halo made me try out Xbox, and Xbox Live is a wonderful experience. And now I love Xbox Live, even though I grew up as a PlayStation player.
So you're saying as an invitation into the platform, but that could easily just be handled as a timed exclusive, saying that it could never come to Steam or Xbox, and we're gonna pay that money. It doesn't sit right. I think that like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I can understand the business logic behind time, but the locking away of something and saying this is, you can only, like, okay, you can't bring your toys into my sandbox and you can't take our toys out, I think is, especially as it relates to multiplayer games. As a single player game experience, like, you can have that experience, you can enjoy that experience, you can move on. But when it comes down to it, like, that's where Stadia and its biggest weakness right now is in its inability to play with others as it relates, especially to multiplayer games. Just a case in point, Division 2, it's coming to Stadia. They kind of announced their latest expansion just yesterday. For $3 right now, you can pick it up if you're in the United States, if you want just the base game on Xbox. And I was like, well, all right, buy. For $3, I'll try. I'll try it out. I like the Division 1, but I'm still like, I watched that event going, say something about cross save, say something about crossplay, because then you see the Stadia logo, that's coming, like, as a part of the platforms they're coming to, and it's like, why would anybody want to go be isolated into that sandbox and not be able to connect and play with other people? And I know you fall differently because you feel like there's a value in the console itself, kind of that everybody's on the same playing field, but I find it completely different. I find that that aspect, especially if a game like Borderlands 3 is a great example. Epic came in, said, "Hey, we're gonna buy it, and it can't come to Steam until April. I think that's when it's happening."
Right.
So, you were looking for that game on PC. The rug got pulled out from under you. Maybe you went and got the game. But are you more like, is that a good long-term business strategy in which that, as a player, I'm sitting here going like, yay for Epic for leveling up the field? Or am I, as a gamer, just wanting to play with my friends, just wanting to have the experience that is a pro gamer experience? Because I think that the best way forward is that as gamers, we will reward those who have that pro gaming experience.
So the question is, did we get something better as a gamer, right? So there was a bidding war over Borderlands, I assume. I assume Steam offered a number.
I don't know.
Number just wasn't high
I
enough.
hope
Now
so.
their number may have been a factor lower. They may have said, "I'll give you lunch."
Yeah.
Like they may have said, "We're not in the business of buying games." But I don't think that's the case. I think there was probably a back and forth from at least two parties. There could have been others at least approached. They could have said, Stadia, do you want to put a bid in? Like they could have offered it to anybody that they thought would cash a check big enough. Would that check increase the quality of development of Borderlands, or would it simply go to shareholders and things like that? If it would increase the quality of Borderlands, then ultimately, in trade for us not having access for a certain amount of time, we would get a theoretically better game, right? Because we would have more resources thrown at it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do this with hindsight where we can go back and see whether or not we got a game. You have to just assume, like, moving forward, should this practice continue? And I think there is a value to that. The key to buying time versus something like Halo that's not timed, where it stays within that, Microsoft place forever, is that the problem with timed is that it's a really hard thing to negotiate as an invitation. If I say, hey, you should come over, but if you don't, you'll get the exact same thing if you just stay at home for this amount of time. You're like, well, then I'll just stay here. So like, you have to buy enough time that it forces that invitation. And then as a gamer, we win when you go over to Epic and you have a really nice experience. So you go over there and every day you're playing Borderlands and every day you're logging in, you have this wonderful launcher. You've got friends coming over there. They have some built-in features that you really like. It exposes you to games you hadn't heard of because the little banners pop across that. You end up picking one of those up on sale. You really enjoy it. You get a ton of value out of it. That's a success story. I don't know if that's what's happening. If it's not, then that's a loss. But exclusives are what allows that to be a potential outcome. Without exclusives, what forces you to leave the comfort of the platform you're already on?
Better
if
service,
you already
better
own
product.
200 Steam games, and the next game comes out on Steam, would you even go download the Epic launcher?
It shouldn't be about. It should be about giving the players the option to play where they want to play, rather than forcing them to have to play in your sandbox at the end of the day. And what then competes isn't on this exclusive. The exclusive, in my mind, it's the understandable win because it's about content, right? Certain shows are on Disney Plus, they're on Netflix, right? That's the way of it. I'm advocating for a better way, and essentially where you would go play in the Epic launcher, because it's the best place for you to play. It gives you the best experience. It handles everything better. And that's where, like, when we take it out from the Epic place, like on Stadia, why do I like playing on Stadia? Well, if it had more games, I'd spend more time on it, more games that I want to play. Now, like, their library is seriously like a F- right now. But let's say it like had the games I wanted to play. It's faster. I can play it on any device, anything that almost projects light in this case. I'm still waiting for it, like, on the phone, but ultimately it gives me such an ability to jump in and play for whether a little bit of time or a long period of time and then get out. And it's such a really positive experience. And I'm speaking to myself as a parent, in which that maybe I've got 10 minutes. Maybe I've got 3 hours. Like, it's like that's never going, and it's never going to be the same thing that you can set a clock to, because maybe the kids aren't going to go to bed. Maybe they are. But regardless, I can pick up, I can jump in, I can pause, and I can do what I need to do. And that speed is the utmost importance. So all of a sudden, from the Stadia perspective, like, you take that to Xcloud. Imagine if Xcloud is just as fast. I'm not going to be booting up my Xbox One X and loading and having to download updates to games. Like, I did that. I went and was like, all right, I'm going to just log in and play Forza. And 30 minutes later, I was like, all right, time to get the kids in the car, and I'm glad it's updated. And I'm like, okay, like, that's why, while it was updating, I went and I was like, fine, just boot up this, and went and played on Stadia, and then it was finally updated. And then later that day, I came in and played my game. And played, that, and it's, as petty as that seems, because it feels petty from my perspective, like, that is the test of the next generation for me. It's not about the exclusives. And that's why, again, I mean, it makes sense because I have all platforms. I've always been blessed as somebody who's passionate about gaming, and having a wife that supports the hobby to say, yes, go out and get that Switch and that PlayStation and that Xbox. So I've never been cut off from the games, but I find myself, especially as it relates to multiplayer games specifically, then all of a sudden you're finding, like, we're playing the same dadgum game, but we're all in these separate sandboxes. let's just get together. Like, let's just communicate. And we've seen already progress in that area. And beyond the timed business make sense of it, if it's a multiplayer game, it, in my mind, at a minimum cross save. It's got, at a minimum, I should be able to take my file to any platform, and that's pro developer and pro gamer. And you're like, screw the platform holder. It's their job to keep me on the platform by offering the best service, the best product, the best way to play. That's their job.
Which is why they buy exclusives, right?
That's
part of that. It's why they buy exclusives. It's a momentum generator. If you go out to Twitch and there's no content creators and there's no other viewers, it's not exciting to be there.
Right.
So they pay people like Lyric to stay on their platform because it's exciting to see a channel with 17,000 people watching at once.
Exactly.
They pay that. They pay for that.
Right. And beyond that piece of it, when we talk about the streaming aspect, the content creation aspect, the communal aspect, that is where the momentum lies. It gives better life, better strength to the games. That helps the developer out. That helps the people who are actually making the game possible out, because all of a sudden that community can have a longer life. Take Destiny 2, for example. Cross save really helps out a lot. I'm able to play with some of our friends on PC. I'm able to log into Xbox, and I'm able to play on Stadia, and it's still my character. Final Fantasy XIV is another fantastic example of this. You want to play on PlayStation? Oh, you got a new gaming PC. All your progress carries forward when the game launches later, hopefully this year, on Xbox. Hey, pick up and go and have fun. And I think that ends up being something that, who cares where you're on? Go ahead.
If a game is not platform exclusive, cross save seems like a pretty softball answer to what you can do to benefit the players. Especially if you as a developer or somebody like Final Fantasy, where you charge me for every copy I buy.
Yeah.
So the fact that I own a Microsoft copy, a Mac copy, and a PlayStation copy is just a win for them. And if they release the Xbox copy before the next expansion, I'll buy that too. Like, and I'll own 4 copies of Final Fantasy.
Right.
And we've gotten to the point where we're really lucky with the YouTube channel that one of our Final Fantasy copies was given by a community member, and one of our Final Fantasy copies was given by Square Enix. But if those weren't the case, I was buying those things before we had a YouTube channel, so I would have still bought them.
Yeah.
Maybe not at the pace I bought them. I had them all relatively quickly, but I would have eventually caved and said, "Oh, I want this thing.
This is mine now.
This is mine now," and I love having all of those. So. The cross play is where I differ a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think with games like
Explain
MMOs,
it.
I think with games like MMOs, things like Temtem, anything where something is not Twitch reaction based. And so I know people feel like PvP and stuff is really timing based in MMOs, but I will point out there is still a global cooldown. So a global cooldown inherently is there for lag, whether that lag be caused by input lag or having lack of the perfect controller, or caused by your latency itself. It's already there to level the playing field. So the fact that the global cooldown's built in, I would say, makes it almost turn-based in a way. The turns are just happening very, very quickly. So games like that, I have no issue. But when you start to talk about games where fractions of a second matter and there is no global cooldown, there is nothing there to offset for latency.
Yeah.
So that's some sports games, that's many racing games,
action shooters.
That's most shooters, where that it just comes down to that. Things like Call of Duty, where a fraction of a second can be the difference between a double kill and being dead. Like, it is that fast of a game. There is a reason that the competitions for those games take place on the same hardware in the same room. You remove as many things that could be an advantage to one as possible. And that's not just to show off how many PCs they can set up. They would let people bring their own. They don't. They're fixed. In many competitions, it's all provided. And I think that as a casual gamer that hops into ranked play, I think that ranked play in shooters, controller players should be allowed to play with just controller players. And the counter argument to that is typically, well, maybe you could just have a lobby for where there's both and a lobby for where there's just controller only. And the reason I don't like that is because then it becomes the majority voting. It is not the individual anymore that's protected.
Okay.
So when everybody starts playing in that lobby, and then I have to wait 2 hours to find people that
right, because everybody's over here,
then I'm effectively forced over there.
So
I just don't play.
Can we then say, from a consumer advocacy perspective, that for anything that is not PvP oriented, that is just a natural segmentation of that within the matchmaking system. It's like, okay, and with the exception then being custom games, where we're creating custom games, we're inviting those in and out. Like,
right.
All right, guys, he's on keyboard and mouse. Like, are we all cool with that? Yes or no?
Right.
Like, okay.
You're not affecting my queue time anyway. If you're off playing in your own little sandbox, you're already gone. But when it comes to ranked play, when it comes to having that enough people that having a ranking system makes sense, and to knowing that within that ranking system I'm being given a fair shake, then I think in games where Twitch impulses matter, so that's, I think MOBAs even count in that, like that moment where it comes down to a fraction of a second in the replay. It needs to be as similar as possible. And PC just has so many advantages, everything from frame rate to refresh rate to more input to gaming mice to, then you have all the risk of people who run cheat programs and things. It is just a totally different ballgame than this isolated self-sealed box that I receive in the mail from Xbox.
Yeah.
Guaranteed to be as similar as possible. Now, as they start to support more generations, that gets a little bit skewed. Now that somebody can be playing on an Xbox One
and a Series
Xbox
X.
One, a Series X.
What do you think about that? We haven't sat down and talked about that, because Halo Infinity launching on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, obviously the premier experience. And when we talk about frame rate's where it's about. I could give two craps about resolution.
You got to lock the frame rate.
Yeah, and so do you lock it and thus weaken the power of Series X? What if the Series X is uncapped frame rate or 120 frames, Xbox One X is 60? Did they segment off of?
You want to go play the single player campaign? You can have literally the fastest frame rate your display can support. You're literally bound by the refresh rate of your TV. Go nuts. You can have it in 5 million definition, whatever you want. But when you are in ranked PvP play, you've got to hard cap it at whatever the lowest bar you choose to support is. So if they want to drop Xbox One support and go to Xbox One S, then maybe you can up it, right? But you've got to cap it at that. And that's one of the issues that Cyberpunk's happening, right? Is that they wanted to support this wonderful experience across all these platforms, and then they built this thing in this, and they're testing it on all these big fancy PCs and it's running great, and then they go fire it up on an Xbox and they're like, oh, we need to push back our release date. This is not
what if it was something, because I know that like Activision and EA, there were studies in which that when you get killed, they show you like what you got killed by as a kind of and so it's like, you just got murdered by Brian on Series X, upgrade mother.
yeah. When you like nearly kill him, it's like, wow, you're only one bullet away. If only you'd been 20 frames a second faster.
Yeah, you would have totally won that.
Would you like to order your Series X today?
It's already in the mail. We've charged your credit card.
That's exactly my fear. Like that unfair advantage, making players feel like they have to. It's like, no, if you buy a console, you should be guaranteed that console-driven experience.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of consoles.
So how does this change as we move forward into kind of obviously the era of cloud gaming?
Everybody's level by default. We're all on exactly the same hardware in the same server farm.
Isn't that the ideal? Isn't that the ideal though? Because like we talked about, the raising the tide for everybody. All of a sudden, everybody's on a $5,000.
My issue is with advantages. My issue is making sure everybody's on a level playing field. So if you're saying that in the future we're all going to be on unlimited hardware, then there are no advantages because we all have unlimited hardware. So at that point, go nuts. And there will be gamers who prefer, one third-party controller over another. But ultimately, at that point, you basically, your competitors are all going to gravitate towards whatever is deemed the best. And then the Stadia or whoever gets to determine, here's the fastest an input can be received, here's the latency we support, and you are all not only on the same hardware, but your game is taking place on the same server. It balances this, but until then, you have to protect the weakest consumer in the room, and the weakest consumer in the room is the old console.
So, I mean, though, when you say that we're all in the same, we're talking about the potential of Amazon getting in this race, Xcloud. So the backbone and the technology between Stadia, Amazon, Xcloud, while conceptually it's like cloud streaming, the behind the scenes, you could still run the risk of something being more powerful or,
That's like PC to PC. That's people pointing out that one PC has a better graphics card. People have already given up that protection when they play in PC games. I don't hear anybody advocating that a game should require that you only have up to a certain level graphics card, or that you maybe that argument's out there, but I haven't heard it.
Well, I mean, from the competitive scene, like you said, like in tournaments, it's provided. Right. Everybody's on this. Everybody's got the same.
It would not shock me if developers that want hardcore tournaments, if the Call of Duty tournament is the tournament of the future, we'll see how they do. It would not shock me if they choose to be supported on Stadia and whatever all the other ones out there that exist at the time when Stadia finally grows into a big boy. Whenever that happens, it would not shock me if developers are like, okay, cool, this is how we've designed it to run on your architecture, and this is the specs we want to hit. So just do whatever you guys need to do and tell us what we need to do to get it to run at exactly those specs. Right. And, you know, so if Stadia is like, well, you can throw unlimited graphics cards at it, they're like, great, don't. Like, you know, so they can ideally in that world, they can actually be even more fair than PC to PC is right now, where you built the best PC 5 years ago. I built the best PC 2 years ago, and we're playing against somebody who just got the best PC today. That's already unfair in PC games like Counter-Strike, which is a highly competitive game that like, I'm sure Counter-Strike lobbies would love if they let Xbox players in, because they would just stomp on them.
Yeah.
But there's already that complaint of, oh, well, this guy has a better rig than me. Yeah. I think that if anything, cloud gaming will level the playing field more than it's ever been leveled before.
So back and kind of our final thought as we kind of wrap up episode 55 here. Let's talk a little bit about Nintendo in all of this. Sony's already teamed up with Xbox, with Microsoft in that regards, to a shock, you know, for many people in PlayStation who might not have seen this coming with their acquisition of Gaikai. I'm hoping that we see within PlayStation Now more that Game Pass kind of games as a service kind of concept, right? But Nintendo is the duck. You know, it took them forever to get on mobile, and then obviously the Switch is selling. Great.
Yeah, they barely understand Ethernet, so
it's not even baked into the dock, which I'm like, you got to pay for it extra. But over in Japan, the Switch has already got games that run in the cloud. You know, it can run Resident Evil 7. It's got Phantasy Star Online 2. You know, I'm sure that we're going to see more and more games. You know, that direction. And somebody was saying like 14 on the Switch. I go, yeah, if it's cloud streamed, because that doesn't limit it to the hardware console, you know. And my fear is not that, they couldn't get Shadowbringers to run on a Switch. My fear is, what about 6.0 and 7.0? And, you know, it's like, at what point do you have to say, buy Switch hardware, you're holding us back? If you weren't introducing limitations
eventually, and the game got better for it.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, honestly, I was like, I would love just to do crafting and gathering on my Switch. You know, like I would love to kick back and just log into the Switch and just, you know, craft and gather. But then of course, the temptation to raid would boil up, you know, in my soul. And so it comes down to this: what does Nintendo do? They've got plenty of money. They're not going anywhere. Yeah. They're sitting on the best IP. The Switch is still going to be a console. I honestly could see that, you know, I would be surprised if we don't see Stadia, Xcloud, those services running on Switch, and that they're getting paid for that. Like Microsoft's like, please let us put our service on your device. But what about them being in the cloud itself? I could easily see them going the route of PlayStation, in which that Microsoft says, here's your custom, you know, Nintendo cloud environment built, you know, because they've already teamed up with them on you know, Xbox Live. That's something that we've seen already, and they said they're gonna continue that relationship. So my thought is that Microsoft makes the most sense. However, I bet you, just like a function of money, just like Epic, like you said in your example earlier, that there's Google and there's Amazon and there's numbers that have so many zeros. I would pass out if somebody said, here, how much money does it take to get, you know?
There's two directions they can go, and they're very, very well funded. So we'd have to be looking at the 10, the 20, the 30-year picture. Yeah. Because in the short term, they could literally stop selling all Nintendo games today, pay all their employees twice their salary, and just sit.
Just hang out.
Like they just have such an incredible amount of things, and then there would still be royalties coming in. They're like, I thought we shut that down. It's like, well, sorry, you can't shut it all down. We're just too pervasive. Yeah. Like, so they would get checks even if they stopped asking to receive them, because they're just they're just that big and they're that well known for now. Now, if they don't do a good job catering to the new audience, as gaming has less and less space in your life as you're busier and busier, if they choose not to capture your kids' attention, then that will wear off. But once again, we're looking at decades, not years. And it's what's allowed them to have things like the Wii U, where they can have what has by many been defined as a failure of a console generation. And it really didn't have an impact on Nintendo, like not even a speed bump in their history. Like you just keep going. But they've never played by the rules. So they didn't build a console to compete with any major console generation. They didn't build a console to compete. I mean, the Nintendo 64 and stuff was really the last time that I feel they were trying to be head to head with people, and that's because they were really the only ones in the space. When you started talking about Xbox versus PlayStation, Xbox versus, I guess, PS2 was the time, and then we had Xbox 360 versus PS3, Nintendo bowed out of that race very, very quickly and looked to define new ways to play. They gave us the Wii. They've chosen to continue to support handheld very, very well. They gave us the Switch. They've really defined how we play, and they've always been atypical. So the two ways I'd see they could go is, first, they could partner up with somebody. So they could literally just have a sugar daddy come in and feed them all kinds of money and for a licensing gig. And they could license it out just like you would license Seinfeld or anything like that to one of these streaming platforms.
Welcome to the
crazy
Nintendo,
amount of money, and Nintendo exists on Stadia for 5 years. And then at the end of that 5 years, it just pieces out, especially if they build in that contract that there's cross save on like Nintendo servers. It's like, when we move, your save comes with you. Sorry, cancel your Stadia subscription. We're now on Xcloud.
Right, but that would be such a powerful negotiation point, right? So let's say that that's just in this theory that I guarantee you someone's mad at us for even suggesting it.
This is option one.
That with the fact that your saves go with you, that when that contract's coming up for renewal, Nintendo goes, how bad do you want us? Because all of that goes with you. Like continue everything. You own the game, like the ownership, all of that. You're now here. Like you can now just go to this, just like we saw with Disney and Disney and Netflix, right? Like, oh, these are here now. And
they can fragment parts out, right? So they can have all their new games.
That's my concern.
Little classic arcade. They can fragment out. So Stadia can own the rights to all the legacy games, and any new game can come out on Xcloud. So
I'm perfectly fine. Like I've advocated for that. I was like, from a third party perspective, it's like, let Nintendo make their hardware and their games on that platform they know I'm going to buy.
Nintendo games not running on my phone?
Well, because they run on your Switch now, because they want on the Nintendo Online.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Give me all of them.
But imagine.
I know there's some licensing issues there and all that. But
oh my gosh. I'm like, with all the, I mean, they, like, again, the most valuable IP, the most like the catalog, the thing that defines gaming, for at least, our generation, the previous generation, probably the next, my kids right now, like the difference between them and Stadia or Xcloud is Temtem. Like, if as soon as Temtem's more viable, that's something that we'll be playing more. Because of,
put it on my Switch.
Oh yeah, Switch, like whatever.
Switch. Put it on my Switch. Put it on my Switch. So the second option.
Yeah.
The second option is what Phil Spencer's hinting at. That if they wanted to go out and do what he's already done, they're already tens of billions of dollars
behind
and years behind. And I don't see a company that has never wanted to follow the mainstream, not only following the mainstream, but playing catch up.
Yeah.
They've always wanted to be on the cutting edge of their own dreams. And I don't see playing catch up and spending all their money, or even a drop of their money, trying to chase down what Microsoft has, especially since for them it only has an application of gaming. Stadia has huge implications outside of gaming. It could be used in the defense industry. It could be used in the medical industry. It could be used it has unlimited uses. Gaming is just what they are marketing it as, but they did not spend that much money solely on the plan to recoup it off of a game library. That just doesn't make sense to me. So Nintendo's not going to do that. They're going to go either ride on someone else's highway, or over the next 20, 30, 50 years, as their culture slowly evolves out, right, as humans age and retire, they will stick to their guns and they will go the way of Sega, and they will eventually get to the point where they can't support their own hardware anymore, and then they will die out. Now that death will be they could be hundreds of years. So by all sense of everything, they will still be a successful company when you look back in the history books. But if they want to be around in the year 2100, it's not going to be hardware then. So like they've got to evolve, or they've got to realize, okay, we're just going to ride this thing out. Now it could be a beautiful, glorious riding it out. They could take 30 years before people didn't think they were relevant.
Yeah.
And even then, there could still be enough of us wanting to sit around in retirement and play their games that they're still existing. They're just small. It's like, oh yeah, Nintendo, they just released that handheld with the really big buttons and screens for old people. And that'll be us buying those. Like, so like they're not gonna, dying doesn't have to be painful or a lack of dignity. They could be very graceful and very long-winded about it. But I think if they don't move closer to cloud and internet, eventually the machine will push them out.
See, I honestly think that from people who want a physical product, that Nintendo will probably be the key and only player in the space.
That makes sense.
In 20, 25 years, 30. I think that when it's all said and done, we're going to see the shift being on like building your own, like, and this is like like we're talking 50 years, where it doesn't make sense to go and just buy an Xbox. You're just like, I'm buying a PC, and it happens to, if I want that local experience, it all just kind of like PC is the end all be all of the console, future, where, cloud is that essentially that where the console just evolves to. And Nintendo, being the odd duck in the room, says, we're going to always manufacture this because we know there are gamers who want to buy that, and they're going to make that device that is also cloud enabled. So you can sit here like, because the thing is that imagine you're like, I'm not going to be, maybe there's a weird pocket, or you're like, okay, internet, I don't want to rely on this. I want to have okay, cool, play it on your, Switch 10. And if you're at home and you got great internet, it's like, all right, we're going to team up with the cloud and, boom, boom, boom.
Use it as a powerhouse.
Exactly. And then
a database.
Exactly. And then otherwise it's like, okay, you just want to, you want to disconnect, you want to shut off the internet, then you have that freedom. I see that there's always going to be, at least in the next 50 years, that
special
kind of
place
market.
in the social aspect, right? So like they could be like board games where they come and go in surges. So there's years where people are like, people just play video games now and watch TV. And then there's years where like it feels like everybody's talking about the next big board game.
Right.
And like board games and card games and like that being there that's something that the Switch does really well. Like the fact that I've had strangers walk up to me in the airport, and the fact that like, in some parts of the world, they like in some big cities and stuff, you have meetups and you have these things. So like there's plenty of ways for them to become less relevant, but remain really, really strong in the space that they choose to be in.
Yeah.
I will say from the collectability standpoint, you're absolutely right. They have something special about them. This is just a disc. Fallout 3. Remember when Bethesda was awesome? So
no,
I believe we can make Bethesda great again. And Todd Howard, you're an entertaining guy, but like you're probably gonna have to step down for it to happen. One of my favorite people to watch talk, seriously, like because you just don't know what he's gonna say next. It doesn't have to be based anything. The devs can be like, here's all the things we got. He goes, great, I'm just gonna riff.
Yeah.
What?
Hey guys, we got a whole new development backlog after Todd Howard's latest interview. So good luck. I've had that. I've been in that. I've been at work when people have run into my office and say, "So we've just committed to X, Y, and Z. How long is that going to take us?" And I go, "You said what again?"
Yeah, it's going to be free.
And
it's gonna be great, guys.
And so, you can, and you were asking me if I can have it to you by next week. All right, let me cancel everything we're doing.
It's just a disc.
It's a license. It's a license.
It's just a disc. And there's something special about like even just holding a Nintendo product. Like there's something special. Like the cartridges. There's just something about this. I can't even play this anymore.
I love that you're holding Mario.
Duck Hunt. I can't get Duck Hunt to run.
I got this on my desk.
I don't have a cathode ray. Like I don't have a TV that supports Duck Hunt. I
love
own it.
That you pulled up like Mario. I'm like, I've got a Mario Kart in Super Mario 3. This game means so much to me. I loved it.
I bought the collector's edition of Zelda for Switch.
Yeah.
I don't buy collector's editions because, like you said, there is a special place. I don't even buy physical on my Xbox anymore. I buy everything digital because I never know. Oh, well, they're gonna, we're not gonna play that game much anymore, and then it's gonna get a DLC, and I'm gonna want to play it again. So I love the idea of storing it in the cloud for later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with a Nintendo, it's like no, it's got a special place in my heart. So I don't think that I'm not saying that Nintendo's doomed. Even if they choose to become irrelevant within the mainstream, there's still a beautiful and cherished place for Nintendo in our lives as gamers.
Yeah.
But we're talking about such numbers that cherished place is going to remain in the 500 million of us at the most, 100 million of us, as opposed to Xbox, with Xcloud and Stadia, we're going to go and cater to billions. A successful Nintendo game will sell a couple million copies, and you'll be talking about billions of copies sold.
We're going to be talking about a lot of copies sold, but I think, and that's going to bring more people and bring them back into the core.
Yeah.
Why do we know so many gamers who we classify as gamers who don't own consoles and don't play with us? And it's like, I can't justify this cost for this thing that I'm only going to play once a week or less because I'm just busy. Well, I mean, wait a minute. Like, what if that cost was nothing and then it was a matter of like you got that game on sale and then if you can hop in and join and play with your friends, and it's like if that barrier is lowered, we're actually we're not just creating an onboarding for new gamers like my kids and the kids of of the future who are going to be the gamers of the future. We're also inviting back those who it just doesn't make sense, and maybe their passion's there, but it's like when you just look at the numbers, it's like, wait a minute, like I can't go spend $600 to go join my friends when the hours aren't gonna I'm not gonna get 60 hours. I'm not gonna get 600 hours or whatever that cost justification is. But all of us
buy the games,
right? Well, I mean, yeah, and then all of a sudden you have these games as a service. It's like, all right.
It'll be like Netflix, right? I subscribe to Game Pass and I pay $2 more, and I now have 2 users instead of 1.
Yeah.
So then when I want to play Halo, Brian, you want to play Halo? Yeah, I don't own it. That's fine. Yeah. You got a phone? Yeah. Okay. Come over, borrow one of my controllers.
We're good.
You can play on your phone or your TV. You can log into my account. I have 2 copies of it. We'll be good. Nice. You can hop in this week.
Yeah, and so hopefully I see that the gaming is expanding. More people will come into the core, mindset that's more passionate. That's hopefully more money. That means better games. Now again, all of this can go to hell. There are companies that suck, and we could all easily rattle those off and talk about like things that they do to piss us off. But at the end of the day,
EA's done some good things in the last 12 to 18 months.
Oh God, we just got we just got canceled. Chris said something positive about EA. Cancel hashtag cancel Chris, guys.
Star Wars was a good experience. Buy the shirt, guys. Hashtag cancel Chris.
Hashtag cancel Chris. So Chris, last time we had Nerd Slayer on the podcast. Next we have Heal Me Harry coming up. And we're actually filming that later tonight, so that's gonna. I don't know.
Time is weird.
Yeah, because time is weird.
Is far.
He's back in Australia, so we're gonna be talking about the upcoming excitement around the raids and more. So hopefully you guys look forward to that podcast. Just like always, we're gonna be doing more of these podcasts because we really like sitting down having these long form discussions around gaming. If there's a discussion, if there's a topic you would like to see, be sure to let us know. Sound off in the comments below. You can always email us at worktogamevideos@gmail.com. Also subscribe to the channel and check us out, and also our
work to play.
Yeah,
work to play.
We're gonna plug it. We're doing our. That's what I was about to get to. We're gonna do all our plugs at the end, so that like if you watched this and listened to this all the way to the end, please sound off with the phrase chicken pizza in the comments, so I know that you that you watched all the way to the end, so that we know we've plugged that to 2 people. And then also work to play for our live stream content, which you can catch patch notes, live letters, gameplay, all of that. That way you're not going to get overly notified by our ridiculousness and our random schedule as it relates to games and live streams. So, Chris, anything you want to share before we wrap the podcast up?
No. I'm really looking forward to patch 5.2. I'm looking forward to talking with Harry about that this evening for our next podcast. And I'm having a blast with my WoW annual goals. So I was thinking about releasing a video talking about kind of where I'm at with my annual goals across all games. And I think the only game I'm on pace for is World of Warcraft.
Nice.
I think every other game got distracted by Temtem, which was not on my annual list. And I I don't know. I think I'm pushing 60 or 70 hours now. So
Very
like
nice.
I have really dumped some time into that game, and I hope it's very successful.
Well, I'm seeing tweets that it's coming soon to Xbox, which would be really epic in my mind. So as soon as we get dates, we'll let you know. For Works a Game, my name is Brian.
My name is Chris.
Thanks so much for watching and tuning in and listening on wherever podcasts can be found. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Take care.